Hey there, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George Affleck.
And it's time for
UnSpun.
And boy, do we have, I say this every week now, will we ever have a time where we are like, boring, BC politics, municipal politics, all boring, federal politics, snooze fest. Oh man.
It's because of us that the news is so busy. They've just been providing us with content as a thank you to doing this show.
Hey, but you should follow at UnSpun Podcast on Twitter.
Yeah.
It's always fascinating, a little bit snarky and sometimes funny. And you can mean tweet us there. We do enjoy that. At Jody Vance or at George
_Affleck. Yes.
I love it. Every time he says it, though, I want to go, Affleck. I do.
Not Affleck.
I know. No, at the Orca as well, because you can find us at theorca.ca when the podcast drops, but you can also download anywhere you get your podcasts.
Yeah,
right?
any of the podcast networks, for sure.
So watching us is fun, but you can also listen to us on your drive. We try and make it a nice, concise little package for you if you're commuting somewhere. Let's start with the BC legislature. I don't even know which thing to bring up first. The most recent news as of time of taping is that
there's a new report.
There's a new report. Darryl Plecas has recused himself.
Which means excused, but we added an R to it.
Because he's too involved. But Darryl Plecas, the Speaker of the House, and now there'll be a retired judge who is going to look at the allegations against the suspended Speaker of the House and the Sergeant-at-Arms. No, not Speaker, Clerk and Sergeant-at-Arms, my bad.
So we're not getting the juice out of the gate like we did last time. Last time they released this report within a half an hour of him handing it in to the legislative committee, which is made up of all three parties.
Right.
They released it in half an hour and shit.
You can say shit on a podcast.
Kenny?
Yeah. It made Amanda laugh, so that's a yes. Yeah. But yes, so we got all the deets.
Yeah, and this time we got nothing. And I'm surprised it hasn't leaked yet, actually. But they've brought this judge in who is going to go through the whole thing.
He's been given a time limit.
And now there's lawyers involved as well.
Oh yes, that's a good piece of the puzzle because that might be.
Let the people who are lawyers start making the big cash.
You called this at the very beginning of this scandal, George Affleck. You said this is going to get messy. It's going to get legal, and these guys in Craig James and Gary Lentz might actually get their jobs back because of how this has been handled.
Yeah.
That's the unspun piece in this, because it is like this crazy shell game of we can tell you some things but not everything. But a lawyer representing Lentz and James was in yesterday's, what's the meeting? What's the group of all three parties?
Legislative Committee?
Yes. LAMC, just to confuse us more. But
or Link.
They were all sitting around the table, and there's one person that nobody recognized. And when the meeting started, before going in camera, where nobody's allowed to bring a camera, they were all like, who's this guy? Stands up, turns out it's the lawyer for Lentz and James, saying, we do not want the details of this report.
I will be the richest man in this room in a few short months. It's really interesting. So there's lawyers, there's judges, there's no information now coming out. We're seeing a 10-day window here where he's going to analyze it and then give it to those guys to look at.
No, they're going to get it to look at. The judge is going to analyze whether or not we believe, because we don't really technically know, but we believe that this retired judge is being brought in to look at the allegations and determine whether or not Lentz and James could return to their jobs, or if the allegations are steep enough. It's almost like this judge is being brought in as a human resources person because Darryl Plecas clearly perhaps doesn't like these two.
You think?
I'm just guessing. I'm just guessing.
It's definitely a mess. This is like, the transparency is great, but when you create chaos, that's challenging. At this point, nothing has been solved within the legislature by the people who are elected to deal with this. We had that list, as we talked about it, from Wilkinson. That's on the agenda, but I think people are appreciating the transparency and all the daylighting that we've had on this issue.
We are appreciating it, but I think some taxpayers are like, this is just a bunch of garbage, noisy, and we're never really getting to the bottom of it. That's why it needs to be unspun, because it really is important that we pay attention to this, because it's not just the little details, like did these guys go to a Mariners game and call it earthquake research and cost whatever, a couple of $100 or a couple of grand.
Whenever I go to a baseball game, I'm thinking earthquakes.
When I go to a baseball game, I'm not submitting the ticket stubs as receipts for expenses at work.
But they were asked to go. They were
Invited to buy tickets.
Which is what we always, well, that's called marketing.
You're invited to buy tickets
I'm
anytime.
always being invited by my Facebook feed to buy tickets to some concert.
It's going to be interesting. What I find the most fascinating is it's taken it was November, was it November?
End of November, I think, yeah.
20th?
Mm-hmm.
And we're end of February. We're like a solid
It's going to
few
carry on
months
until
later.
June when a lot of the MLAs, and including Plecas, I believe, have the opportunity to retire with full pensions. So, but at least they got used to the tree cutting machine, right?
Don't bring up the wood splitter yet.
The wood splitter.
Do you think that they're drawing this out to get to their kick-in?
It's just, I mean, that's been sort of put out there by a few people. It's politics. As a city councillor, the pension, there's no pension. It's your own money. It's a pension plan, but it's your own cash. Provincially, though, you get a pension after 6 years or 2 terms, and it's fairly generous. So yeah,
sometimes
you have
when
to
you
do that
work in the legislature, you can get retirement money
times.
paid out and keep working.
And then get it a couple times.
See, those are the things that I think are important for taxpayers to know. That transparency, regardless of how noisy and messy it is. We have to go through this. The troubling part is we're spending our elected officials are spending all of their time on this. They're not spending it on actual issues that the province needs to take care of.
Well, like the budget.
Let's talk about it. What do you think about the budget?
Well, it was a bit of a nothing budget. It's definitely not an election budget. We're not having an election. That is clear. That budget had no goodies in it. It was stay the course kind of budget.
Stand pat.
It hid some of the stuff like the extra tax we're going to have on gas, for example, on April 1st, which is a previous decision, but it actually becomes part of this budget.
Explain that a little bit, because you understand this stuff way better than I do.
Yeah, this is the tax that we have on emissions in our province, which used to be cost neutral or tax neutral, and so the money that came in was given back through tax relief. Now the NDP have are adding billions in revenue, and they're putting it in from this tax. They increase the tax. It's going straight into general revenue. They're saying they're going to use it for stuff, but it's really general revenue. It's 18 million, I think it is.
Aren't they saying in general revenue that they're going to use it for environmental, the positives, like to push back the carbon footprint of?
Yeah, they say that, but and of course, but we have already policies in place for that. So I always love taxation where there's a direct relationship to the tax and to what it's being used for, and you can say, here's $5 and I'm spent $5 here. In this case, it just goes into general revenue, and you could argue that, we spent money here and there, and that came from that. Couldn't have done it without that. But the biggest increase in the budget this year was healthcare, which people are saying, isn't that great? But it's actually impossible not to increase that by the largest amount every year because it's the fastest growing line item in the budget, no matter what we do, just based on aging population and population increase and a sicker population. And
it's been failing to this point on many of those levels. Anybody who has an aging parent can say there's not enough help out there, and there's not enough support.
Especially in rural parts of this
Exactly.
province.
Many of us are the lucky ones that can at least afford that. My dad's in care, and it's a horribly stressful. That was my column in the Orca, the middle a couple of weeks ago that I did, was all about senior care and how it keeps me up at night, that I think about the people that don't have the resources that my dad has to support himself being in a situation where he needs care. A subsidized bed or room in a senior care facility can sometimes take you hours drive away from your family. It's really not good enough. So I like that line item in the budget.
Yeah, but
what do you think about ICBC though? By 2020, it's going to be making money.
Well, it's making money because they're charging more. I mean, okay.
So we don't make money.
I mean, if I could run my business where I said to my clients, hey, guess what? I need more money.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to increase my fees by 40%, okay? Pretty sure I wouldn't have any clients left. So I think that's the ability of government, and it happens in Vancouver and everywhere, where it's a simple matter of adding more taxation to get more cash.
But how do we go from multi-billion-dollar dumpster fire to in the black in a couple of years?
Well, it's fee structure, and one of the other areas in the budget that was somewhat downplayed, and they do this in Vancouver, and Vision did this all the time. Even though the taxes were going up way above the rate of inflation, more importantly and less scrutinized and less magnified, it was the increase in fees, and that's what the provincial governments do now. You see fee increases going up by triple digit, like
Yeah.
12, 18%.
Everything's just a cup of coffee.
Yeah, I
Everything's
know,
just
and I
charging
put that
you.
on Twitter, and
I
I
saw it.
attacked.
I'm like,
I mean, this was an argument that would drive me crazy. Well, like how, oh, yeah, George.
Okay, explain it to the
trying to
people that didn't-
simplify taxation. This is an argument that drives me crazy when in politics, and Vision would use this all the time for, oh, well, and the Green Party does it too. Well, it's only, it's only like a cup of coffee a day. This is more taxation. This is going to cost you. By the end of my 7 years in council, I think I had bought probably a truckload of coffee per day in taxation, because it's sure, $1.50, $1.50, $1.50, $1.50.
Many of us make our coffee at home, so we don't spend that. By
50
the way,
cents, or if you buy lattes, $3.
Yeah.
What's a cup of coffee? There's a whole debate right there. So this ridiculous analogy to a cup of coffee makes me insane, because if you're going to use the cup of coffee and you're saying $1.50 a day, and you add 10 cups of coffee in a year, and it's $10 a day. There's how many days are there in a year?
Well, that's the
few hundred.
To put it into terms, because politics can get people's heads spinning. It's like, of course they've got their hands in our pockets, but when you look at like big cable companies, where your cable bill with your wireless, your Wi-Fi, whatever your cable, before you cut the cable to just go over to Netflix, whatever, that bundle of things used to cost, let's say $100 a month. So that was $100 a month, and you said, I'm cutting that, and I'm going to do Netflix, I'm going to get my music from Apple Music, and I'm going to get my blah blah to such and such, whatever. And when we first started doing that, it was less than $100.
Yes.
But slowly, one cup of coffee a day, guess what? That
we're paying the same we did before, or worse.
Or more.
Yeah, more. Or
for less service.
Yes.
And
And the gas
that's where
thing,
we
people are getting attacked because I was arguing this about gas taxes going up. That's going to be the one we're going to see the most on April 1st. A few cents per liter. Okay, it's only a few cents per liter. What's the big deal? But if you're commuting, and people have to still commute in their cars to get around, people have to run businesses, there's
Moving goods and
delivery
services.
companies, there's truckers, there's all of these people are affected. This has a trickle-down effect on the economy. And so taxation and relationship to the success of the economy and our prosperity, there's a direct relationship. And we're seeing that in the housing market by taxing. Proudly, Carol James said, I've ruined the housing market. Isn't it great? What a great job I did. I've brought now, without a doubt, the housing prices were overheated. But if you look historically, housing, without massive taxation that we've seen, housing prices generally go in cycles. And they've had a long period of time, but the crash has been coming for a while. The province is just feeding into that. But anytime you start taxing too much, and with the carbon tax and income tax and all these taxes, you hurt the economy overall.
Tax.
And empty home speculation tax, all these taxes stall the economy, and then we make less money, and we spend less money, and then everything starts to fall apart. And so
people start
we're
sitting on
heading
their
towards a
wallets,
recession, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, we're heading towards a recession. I'd be surprised if we see a surplus this coming year, but I think the NDP is expecting it, so that next year they can have a budget that's got lots of goodies in it, because there'll be an election immediately following that. I would say there'll be an election next spring or next fall for sure. They've pulled back this year so they can go crazy next year with any extra cash they might have to what's called sometimes pavement politics, or using this money to show people. And it works. You spend money in an election year, it almost always works, which was so surprising. Christy Clark didn't do it, and what happened to her? She lost.
There you go. I will say a couple line items that I liked in the budget were that there were going to be checks and balances on ridiculous cell phone bill charges, and the bots ticket prices at concerts and whatnot. And then I talked to George, and he's like, yeah, both of those things the government has no control over. I'm like,
That's right.
what? That was unspun by you, and it disappointed me. Let's talk Trans Mountain, okay?
Yes.
The National Energy Board, this is Friday, so earlier
Formerly
today.
Kinder Morgan.
There you go. Did the reapproval.
Yeah, surprising. Quick turnaround from the big.
Did it surprise you?
I did. I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh no, we were expecting that," but I thought, well, I think the next phase will be maybe slower. But I guess, it's approved in principle, and now it has to go through another process.
Right.
Which
there's 19 more caveats on it, but basically the NEB said, yes, there is a significant risk to the southern resident killer whale population. Yes, there's a significant risk to the carbon impact, the footprint by this, and if there is a major spill, that would be devastating, but they're going to try and figure out spill response. That's part of it. And when those issues are weighed against what is best for Canadians, they've decided that it's worth it to do it. And those who push back on the pipeline Kennedy Stewart being one of them. You remember a year ago he was arrested up top at...
Should have kept him in jail.
How do you feel about the mayor, George?
Anyways, enjoy your taxation, Vancouver.
Enjoy your taxation,
yeah.
Vancouver. But Horgan and Weaver also are not for this pipeline.
Right, yes.
Certainly Justin Trudeau and Canadians now own it.
Yeah.
So does it get built?
Well, I think that the question really comes down to how will oil get to the coast to be delivered to where it needs to go based on the demand for oil. And Rachel Notley's made it clear, okay, I can't wait around for this. So she's now purchasing or leasing a ton of trains.
$4 billion to lease
so she's gonna
rail cars.
Put this oil in the back of rail cars and get it to the coast so it can be sent over to wherever, China, wherever it's going. And so that they can make their money. The federal government also controls the right-of-way through the train tracks, right? So the tracks are controlled by the federal government. So
that's so dangerous.
So that there is already an avenue to get the oil to the coast. So,
but 2-kilometer-long trains going through residential areas, that's going to be the answer? Like, that's the question to the environmentalist who's saying, no, we're not going to twin the pipeline that already exists. You know, and yes, I look at that. I'm trying to find some middle on this because I'm not pro-pipeline or anti-pipeline. I just want something to give here.
It goes back to the prosperity again. And my argument always is, okay, the economy is a complicated beast.
Yeah.
We rely in Canada on our resources to have the kind of lifestyle we have. And there are those who believe that, you know, we can get rid of all this oil and gas export and still survive and still have a robust economy. It's just not there. If you care about the environment, I always argue, what can we do in our own backyards? A perfect example locally is the approval of the train to UBC. So
yeah.
just doing that in our jurisdiction, we will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by like an astronomical amount. It's huge, and so it's the biggest thing we could do for greenhouse gas emissions and the environment in this region
and people
in
are
my
arguing,
life.
And people are arguing against it.
I know, but here we are fighting, you know, this pipeline, and then we're fighting this train system. We're like, you have to make your choices, and how do we build that train system without the oil? So this is balance, and how do we do all this? And of course, you know, I've always been supportive of the oil and gas industry. To my potential, you know, in Vancouver, it's not always a popular opinion.
To your potential detriment.
Yes, but I think it's important to be clear in where you stand on things.
I drive a Prius. That helps a lot.
Yeah.
Driving a hybrid has helped, but
I have a giant limousine with a chauffeur that just flags. Is that, no?
Bounces when you drive.
That's right.
But it's the truck. Like, I can drive a Prius all day long, but at the end of the day, I'm going to have to pay more than that cup of coffee in extra cost to buy my goods that were brought in by truck, because those truck drivers can't drive Priuses. I mean, one day they will be electric, but they aren't today.
Yeah.
So we have to live, and I agree with you on the SkyTrain. I think there should be SkyTrain to Surrey, through Surrey and into the Fraser Valley. I think as a population, we need this. We need this sort of transportation. I grew up in Tsawwassen, and man, it is so hard to take public transit from Tsawwassen. I couldn't work downtown and live out there without spending hours on the bus and maybe missing the last bus. And then what do? I can't get home. So I agree with you on that. Now, when it comes to back to the Trans Mountain Pipeline, because one of the stats that I think is important, what everybody's talking about, the tanker traffic, oh my God, the tanker traffic, it would be one more tanker per day. On top of the
and they're not super tankers.
No,
they can't be. It's impossible to get a super tanker into Vancouver
because it's not deep enough.
That's right.
But cruise ships, way higher carbon footprint.
Pleasure crafts in False Creek,
making it dumping their
a lot of
turlets.
Stuff. That and also just the oil and gas coming out of the back of their boats. These are problems that you know we could be looking at that we could deal with quickly.
And BC Ferries, on the day that the Trans Mountain announcement comes out from the National Energy Board, the BC Ferries announces that they're increasing ferries over the summer months, like
this is
significantly.
An outrage. All that oil and gas going into the ocean.
Right, but if it's noisy for the Orcas, but it's only noisy if it's the Trans Mountain.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's very selective. It appears very selective. It feels spun to me. Somebody's picked their argument.
It's a very easy way to kind of get your messaging clear. Choose a few things that really resonate with enough people to get them angry.
Hold on to it.
And use that as your focus, for sure.
So let's talk about, quickly, Justin Trudeau, and the fallout with Jody Wilson-Raybould.
Yes.
And sort of where we are with that, because it's kind of been politically hot potatoed. First it was one topic, then it was another, then it was another. Now Justin Trudeau is basically saying, listen to the clerk's right. Like he's just...
And he had his senior staff person resign this weekend.
Yes.
Gerald Butts. Yes, Butts, because there was all the jokes.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
I didn't say anything.
I know, it's
I'm sure he's never heard them.
And some media went to his wife's house. It was kind of weird.
That
so
great.
That's very very American style journalism. We've got a by-election on Tuesday. Monday night. So we'll know Tuesday morning who the new MP is for there, and we have the leader of the NDP running there. Who is likely to win, and I think has a better chance now given all this stuff going on in Ottawa.
You think so?
Well, I think so. I mean, I think it would be surprising if he lost in the first place, but this has certainly helped him. I think that people are very concerned about what's happened here, and I feel like Trudeau's there's a spin issue. Like, holy, unspun. Like, there's nothing to.
That's where I was going.
Unspun. It's like a spinning around in circles and going around and around. I've never seen so many different. Excuses and attempts to justify, and he's still doing it. It's like, God, can you just stick to your message?
How about you let her speak?
Well, he can't. That's the whole issue, right? The legalities of that. When we talked earlier about legalities in the legislature, there are repercussions to conversations that happen in camera, and we talked about that before. Where the conversations behind the scenes, any conversations that MPs would have had, there is privilege that they all have. There is. How do you untangle all of these conversations for her to have the absolute freedom to say whatever she wants?
Right.
It's not that easy.
It's not simple. But she says she can speak. If given the opportunity, she could.
Yeah,
she's been pretty clear of like, I will talk. I hope my truth can be told.
Yeah, my truth to be told.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
Because what does my truth mean?
Does it mean
there's a joke joke in my family they call with my kids and George facts, they call them.
What I want that.
George facts.
George
facts is not necessarily always a fact. They
are. It's true
but
you.
For comedic purposes, they can be quite good.
Is that like dad jokes?
It's like dad jokes, but it'll be something I don't have time to Google this. This is the truth. Yeah,
that's not good for our podcast.
I'm like a living. Well, I mean, it's silly family things, right?
I will throw down George facts at some point.
Yeah. Why do I have to brush my teeth? You have to brush your teeth because your teeth are literally going to fall out tomorrow. I don't know. There's a George fact.
There's a George fact.
Works with my 10-year-old sometimes.
Can we finish off with one of your favorite?
11. George fact.
George fact. My kid's 11 now.
Did you catch that? That is outstanding.
That's actually just a bad dad in that situation.
It's a dad joke and a George fact all rolled into one. I want to finish off on a topic that maybe people don't even really know about. Did Gregor Robertson do a proclamation for his
this one drives me
girlfriend,
crazy.
or is it his
current girlfriend?
Current girlfriend.
Who's CEO of some company I've never heard of, but apparently he's the third biggest company in the world or something, based on a story I read.
That you've never heard of.
That is not a George fact. That is a fact that I was like, well, that's not a fact. That's a weird
This is my
fact.
favorite podcast yet, by the way.
Yeah. So this person got a proclamation in August. August in city councils, you're off in August. And so there's this whole process in August in councils where you actually hand over control for the most part, and you have much more power to a city manager in that period of time. So that's one whole other story. But in the case of his current girlfriend, he gave her, he wasn't at least publicly, his girlfriend back then, or partner, and she got a proclamation about her. And so many times over the years in council, really great people, really interesting, sometimes private companies, organizations would come to me and they would say to me, hey, how do I get a proclamation? I go, it's quite complicated. You have to go through protocol. And then there's a process they have, and they vet things, and then they present it to the mayor, and then the mayor, signs off on it. No, it turns out that's not the case at all. Apparently, the mayor just types up something. Ding! Ding!
All that what he's having.
Frames it. And then hands it.
It's really rather. I saw pictures of it. It was
like, what is going on? So I tweeted out, like, come on, get this in order. there has to be a process that's more public.
And there was no
come on.
paper trail on that proclamation at all.
No,
And it's
and
quite.
there's a whole bunch of these proclamations that have been uncovered that were like, what the, why are these, to mothers and to like, come on. I mean, this is an honor to have this, and it's an important part of how you run a city. And I'm like, what is going on here? And that it's just like,
it's made
was that
for
his first date that he handed it to her, or was it pre the first date? Like, when, what?
I hate to say this, but when I first heard about the proclamation, I was like, why didn't he just, name a star for her?
Yeah, or just buy some flowers.
Right?
Like the rest
but
of
you
us.
can name a star.
Nice bottle of Chianti.
Like, don't use your office and Chianti. Bless. Is that what you got, Amanda, for Valentine's Day?
Let's not get into any jokes about
proclamation.
that movie.
No, let's not. Now you're talking fava beans. Let's not go there. You got George _Affleck. I'm Jody with a Y Vance. And you can always read us at the Orca. I do the column called The Middle that drops each Wednesday. My most recent one was actually talking about, literally talking about, and to First Nations people.
Reconciliation.
Have the conversation. Well, I thought about it. You know
touchy
what?
subject.
But you know what? I was. Thank you. I was told that it would be touchy and there might be blowback, and I'm a huge Gord Downey fan. I've been a Gord Downey fan since the band started, and he's been my Elvis from day one. There's just something about him I've always listened to, not just his lyrics, but anything that he would say on stage. He was always so poignant and clear. And for him to be diagnosed with a terminal cancer, glioblastoma, that took him tragically, and for his decision in those he's 4 kids, and he made the decision that I'm going to use this last year of my life to actually make a difference in the lives of those who don't have anybody speaking for them. And I don't know, I looked at my son and how lucky are you that you have me? And I thought 70% of Inuit children live in food insecure homes. That's wrong. So try and have that conversation.
Generational problem. I saw something that was 7 generations.
7.
Was his comment.
It was
7 generations before we can solve it.
It's going to take 7
to win back the damage that.
And we need to start the conversation. Have the conversation around your dinner table. And I've put out the question, and thankfully, I'm very grateful for those who have responded really positively about what do you want to talk about. I said, well, let's talk about how I and my family can help, because I'm not looking to my government to do it for me. I want to know how I can help.
There we go, on that note.
At the Orca, or theorca.ca online for George. I'm Jody.
Thanks.